My guest today is Chef Owen, and he didn't just leave culinary school with a fantasy. He left with a decision to go find what the standard really is, because there's a difference between learning a craft and being judged by it. In school, you get structure, reps, time to rest. But in the real world, especially at the top, nobody cares what you meant to do. The only thing they care about is if you can execute under pressure. Owen made the jump from culinary school to a 2 Michelin star kitchen, Aska in Brooklyn, where precision isn't just the goal, it's the minimum requirement. That kind of environment doesn't just teach you technique, it exposes your habits, your discipline, and at times, your ego. It shows who you are when the ticket machine doesn't stop running and the standards can't be dropped. Most chefs who go through it keep it to themselves. Chef Owen didn't. He started the podcast Owen by the Oven, and in his podcast, he dives into mindset, culture, the standards, and the sacrifices it takes to make it in the industry. Today's conversation isn't just going to be a surface level one. We're going to be talking about his career, the moments that shaped him, and his philosophy behind leadership and being an executive chef. We go into the standards, accountability, culture, and the line between demanding excellence and breaking people. My name is Chef Ismael, and this is Chef Ismael's Kitchen Quest. Chef Owen, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I'm extremely excited to have you on. I've been keeping an eye on your stuff, especially on Instagram. Your stuff continues to pop up on my feed. Not only because I am a follower, but I absolutely love your content. So thank you so much and welcome.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to meet you. Um, and it means a lot that you like the content. I posted the first podcast January 30th of 2025. So it's just been over a year. Um, so just kind of getting started, but really enjoying the process so far.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll definitely get into your podcasting. The thing is that I want to get into your philosophy as a chef,
hmm
right? Um, so I want to know, what were you trying to prove when you first started? Was it something that you were trying to prove to yourself that you could do it? Was it someone that you were trying to impress? What was it that got you into becoming a chef?
Um, so I, when I was like 10, I wanted to be a chef and I told my dad and he kind of was like, that's long hours and not a lot of money, which at the time sounded like, "No, you shouldn't do that." So, I kind of went to college and went the very traditional route, and then when I was pretty far into my business program at Framingham State University, I just during COVID, it really took being home during COVID to be like, "I'm not really looking forward to anything except cooking," and that was kinda my first step towards going to culinary school and everything, and so I've always, like, had a very deep love for food, but just didn't really know how to, like, express it or put it forward, and, yeah, being home, cooking for my soon-to-be wife, Sayana, who I've been with for a long time, every day, that was just, like, a wake-up call, just looking forward to it every day, so that's kinda what got the ball rolling, and, um but early in my career, yeah, I definitely looked to challenge myself because I was super insecure. Because when I got to the Culinary Institute of America, everyone I met was on like had been on like Chop Junior or um, insert cooking show here. And there's just a lot of really talented kids that were like younger than me. Because at that point I was 21, because I'd been in college for a couple of years. So I definitely was a little. I felt behind. I felt like super super behind. So I definitely wanted to challenge myself early, um, which is why I did my externship at Oscar because that was like my favorite restaurant at the time. And yeah, that was certainly a challenge. And I really wanted to just like prove it to myself that I can do this early on because if I couldn't do it, then I would have just switched careers again. But I was able to prove to myself that I could do it. So that was, yeah, it's good to challenge yourself for sure.
No, that's I'm glad that you stuck with it. What advice would you give to those so you mentioned that you walked into a kitchen or to into the CIA in terms of with uh with some, I guess, heavy hitters in the industry already who have already been on television and who've already felt that pressure. You walking in there, you felt that pressure. How did you handle that?
It was definitely intimidating at first because like I said, I just felt super behind. Like, I had never worked in a kitchen when I got to culinary school, which I do not recommend. Um, like, my stepmom told me, she was like, "Why don't you work in a kitchen for a year and then go to culinary school?" In retrospect, that's a great idea. Like, that is probably the smart way to do it. I just went because I figured if I didn't go right then and there, I wasn't gonna go ever. Because once I started making money, I would've just been happy with that. Um, but yeah, getting over that, I mean, a lot of my first friend that I made there was on, not Chop Junior, but what's the other one? Cooking show where they
MasterChef?
Yes, MasterChef, thank you. He was on MasterChef Indonesia, my friend Joshua Andrew Tan. Um, he's just, like, incredibly talented, and he was much younger than me, maybe 2 or 3 years younger than me. We're still great friends. I'm actually going to see him this weekend in New York. But, yeah, like, just meeting someone like that and then becoming really close friends, watching them make mistakes and everything kind of just makes you realize that, like, oh, like, they're ahead of me, but at the same time, they're humans too, and you can catch up because sometimes when you're behind, it forces you to, like, work harder to catch up to where everybody's at instead of just feeling like you're in this place of comfort where you're like, "Oh, I was already on TV, I'm talented." So, you know, um, but yeah, I think just, like, not comparing yourself too much and just realizing that your journey is your own is super important.
I really like that what you just said right there, that your journey is your own. During that journey, what part of the kitchen, uh, made you feel stronger, and what was the part of the kitchen that made you, a little like, maybe I should work on this a little bit more"?
It's a good question. What comes to mind is, like, if I'm thinking just when I was in school and, like, very early, what was super scary was one of my professors, Chef X at the CIA, Chef Xavier. He put me on Expo, which was one of the stations, so I was really just doing garnishes and stuff, but then I would do service and, like, call tickets how you would just in a regular restaurant, and that was, like, super intimidating at the time, but I struggled with it because I it was also, like, speaking into a microphone, so the whole kitchen, the bakers could hear you, like, everyone could hear you when you're calling a ticket, so if you stutter like I just did, like, everybody in the kitchen can kinda hear you, and it's kind of embarrassing. So that was a little bit intimidating to get over, but looking back, that was incredibly valuable because, like, now I expedite every day, and I'm super comfortable doing it, and I have always had that to look back on as like, "Oh, I did this when I was in school." So I kind of have this, like, base of doing that instead of when I get out in the real world, that was the first time I was doing it. I value that a lot, but it was very intimidating at first. And then something that kind of came easily, I mean, I feel like I'm very chill by nature. Just as a person, I'm very chill and level-headed, so the parts of service where people would be tweaking out or really, really stressed, it I mean, I've been very stressed before at work, don't get me wrong. I've had some pretty bad days and some pretty intense moments, but I would always kind of be able to just, like, take a deep breath and chill out, and that is very, very valuable for a chef to have, I would say, because if you can't control your emotions, than, like especially if you are a chef. Like, if you're a cook, it's one thing if you're, like, tweaking because, you know, that's just how it is, but when you're, like, a sous chef or if you're leading the line for the kitchen, you want to, like, people you're leading, so you wanna lead by example and not lose your head.
Yeah, that's definitely important because one thing that I've always told my crew was that if I'm not freaking out, you guys don't freak out. You know,
Yeah.
even if things are going the the worst possible things could have happened, the way you react is going to determine how your day, the rest of service is going to come out. Come up with. If I spoke to your closest people, what would they say the kitchen turned you into?
Mm. I guess it depends who you talk to, but I feel like I've become a lot more focused and disciplined in my life because before cooking and everything, I kinda would just play League of Legends for, like, 16 hours a day. That was kinda just what I did from, like, age 15 to 20. So, I definitely and even, like, my dad has told me this many times where he's like, "We thought you were just gonna be like a loser and live in our basement forever." So, I guess, yeah, just getting some discipline and, like, working hard, long hours just kind of feels normal, whereas before, if I was at, like, a retail job or something, I would struggle to get through, like, an 8-hour shift, but nowadays, like, an 8-hour shift is light work, like, that's kind of an easy day, um, but yeah, so I think it just made me more if you ask them, they would say it probably made me more disciplined and more, mature, I guess, because I think I strive not strive, I thrive with structure in my life, and that's kinda the kitchen really brings that naturally.
So let fast forward to now you're being now you're a chef, right? Um, Define standards without using the word quality. I so basically it's a Tuesday night. It's not busy at all. Um, what what do you do to uphold those standards, and how do you keep your team accountable?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough one, especially like you said, like on a random I mean, we're closed on Tuesdays, but on a random Wednesday, Thursday when it's our slowest days, or a Sunday when everybody wants to go home and we're only have like one turn, that really is a challenge to just make sure everybody's, on the ball and keeping it up without using the word quality. You just I mean, when you're on expo, you have to just make sure everything's going out and looking nice. You can't, um drop your standards just because it's slow. Another thing my dad said once is I was at this other restaurant, and it's sort of unrelated, but it is related. I remember I came home one day and I just worked lunch that day at that place. I came home and I was like, "Oh, yeah," like, he was like, "How was work?" And I was like, "Oh, it was just lunch." And he was like and he's not even a chef or in the industry, but he was like, it might just be lunch to you, and you're not thinking about it as, like, dinner service, like, this is, like, the whole thing, like, it might just be lunch to you, but to somebody, that might be the one meal that they go out for today, so you have to make it special. Like, you have to make it nice, and you have to make it just as good as if it was dinner, and I would think about that all the time when I was there after that because he was right, I kinda was, like, dropping my standard because I just was like, "Ah, it's lunch, well, I'm going home in 2 hours," like, whatever. But, yeah, even on your slowest nights, you have to uphold.
Yeah, I think I've had similar advice from my dad, and he's also not a chef. He doesn't, he's not in the industry too. But it's wild how, you know, they they have like this perception of what service is supposed to be like, and at least for my dad, he just does construction, so he never deals with the public. But yeah, no. Do you believe that most cooks fail because of skill, or is it because of character?
I think it's definitely a mixture, but more character. I think burnout is something that people talk about a lot, um, but I kinda have a weird opinion about that because I've definitely been physically burned out where you genuinely just can't go to work. Like, you don't sleep and your anxiety is crazy, and then you physically are just, like, shaking and throwing up, and you're like, "I can't do it." Like, I've had days like that, especially on my externship, where I just couldn't go. I just straight up texted my chef, and I was like, "Chef, I'm not making it today. I can't do it. Like, I can't keep food down, all this." I totally think that that type of burnout is real, but I think that you can push past it, like, take the day to rest and then push past it. Um, but I think the mental burnout for a lot of people who maybe get into this industry but aren't actually passionate about it, they're just in it for a paycheck, which again is fine. It's totally fine. Everybody's got to make a living. Um, but I think a lot of those people will get burnt out quicker because if I am at a place where I don't want to work, I'm very passionate about it and excited about it. So it never really feels like I'm working. Like I even when I'm cleaning at the end of the night, there's days where, I'm exhausted and I don't wanna come in the next day, but then there's some days where I'm like, "I can't wait to come into work tomorrow." Like, it's if you truly enjoy it, it's harder to burn out because mentally, it's harder to burn out because you can really look forward to work and enjoy it. Like, it's genuinely a joy to me to just get to, like, cook and meet people and yeah. So, I would say mental burnout is such, like, a mindset issue, but skills can always be learned or honed in or improved, and that just depends on what kitchen you're in or what chef you're working under, but also what you put into it. Like, if you're like, "Oh, I I can't do this, my knife skills aren't good enough." Like, YouTube exists. Like, you can look at tutorials, you don't need to go to culinary school, um, or, take a knife skills class. Like, I don't live in Boston, but there's Cambridge Culinary School. Before I went to school, I took, like, a basic knife skills class. These are available everywhere, especially nowadays. There's so many people that do basic cooking classes. Even private lessons aren't even that expensive. Um, so I think even if you are a chef or a cook that you've been in for a while, like, to just take a knife skills class, like, walk in, practice. So I think anybody who says they, like, failed because their skills aren't good enough, it's like, you're actually just not trying. You're not you're not putting in the effort to learn and, get those skills, like, dialed. Because every single time you cut an onion or cut something or cut whatever, you should be trying to do it nicely.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you on that. You should be improving after every cut of vegetable that you do and keeping in mind what could you have done better, moving forward and stuff like that. Um, so you mentioned the anxiety thing. How did you handle the anxiety aspect of it when you were doing your externship?
Not well at first. Um, I so the first month I was there at Aska, I genuinely could not keep food down. I was so stressed, I was not ready. Just a preface for this, I had never worked in a kitchen before going there, and that was a two-star Michelin restaurant. So, literally, like, straight into the one of the best restaurants in New York, in my opinion. So that I was just super not only stressed and feeling the pressure, but intimidated by the people I was working with, like, scared of my sous chefs and, like, thinking everybody was out to get me and all this stuff, and, like, the chef himself, Chef Frederick Brasilius, is, like, super cool to me, one of the people who inspired me to start cooking. So just getting to work with him every day was really cool, but also super intimidating, and I didn't wanna fuck things up because it's his restaurant, so it's like, you know, just putting a lot of pressure on myself, and it is a lot of pressure. So at first, that first month was really tough because I could not eat. I just couldn't. I legitimately lost 30 pounds in a month. Like, it was really bad. I could eat only at night after I got off. So I'd wake up, I would try to eat something, I would throw up, and then I'd go to work, and then I would be, like, shaking by the time family meal came around, and then I could usually eat, like, a bite or 2 of family meal, and then I'd get nauseous, so then I would just stop, and to counteract the hunger, I would just be drinking, like, 3 cups of coffee a day to try to suppress my appetite. Oop, sorry, did you lose me? My computer fell
Oh,
asleep.
no.
No, okay, I'm still here. Um, but yeah, so I was drinking a ton of coffee, which probably didn't help with the anxiety because it also affected my sleep really badly. But then I would get out of work and I would feel like, "Oh, okay, the day's over, now I can eat." So then I would go get halal because I was in Brooklyn, so there's a bunch of really good halal places. Shout out Halal and Out, best halal in Brooklyn. Um, but yeah, so then I would eat like a giant bowl of lamb and rice at the end of the night, and then I'd pass out and wake up and do it again. So that was not a great lifestyle. That was pretty rough there for the first month. But after that, I started utilizing stretching a lot. I just started I this sounds so stupid and, like, simple, but genuinely just stretching your hips at least because you hold a lot of emotions in your hips really helped me physically get over the anxiety. Like, genuinely, I was able to go to work and eat family meal, and I was able to have a granola bar for breakfast, just getting that anxiety out, like stretching or doing push-ups, because you build up all of these emotions in your body and then feels like everything's crashing down or there's so much pressure and all this stuff. But if you just actually take 10 or 15 minutes and stretch, it makes the biggest difference. And I cannot advocate enough for stretching and physical exercise for chefs. I know that's becoming more and more popular. Like people are doing running clubs, and the guy I was telling you about earlier, LA Social House, like he worked with someone also in LA, I think, who does the 86 running club. 11 Madison Park does their running club. I have a friend who's a part of that, and it's just becoming more and more popular for like chefs to run and do cardio or do some type of physical exercise, and it really is because it helps get over the anxiety of work. Um, so those I would say are my two biggest ones that really helped for sure.
So, working at a 2 Michelin star restaurant, the pressure has to be immense, right? Everything has to be precise. The chef is keeping a close eye on everything. And again, it's just because you'll never know when the Michelin inspector walks in and when you have to defend your titles or the possibility to earn a third star or the possibility of losing a star. Um as someone who really had no culinary skill or culinary experience other than culinary school, going into a 2 Michelin star restaurant, what was that like walking in on your first day? Real quick, if you're enjoying this conversation and you want more behind the scenes stories of the hospitality industry, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's free, it'll help us grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up next. Now back to the conversation.
I'll never forget my first day there because it was really scary. But well, do you want my stage or do you want my first day of externship?
Ooh, you know what? Let's talk about the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, that was truly, like, my first interaction there, but I will go off on a little tangent first because you said, like, "Oh, you never know when you're defending your title or, like, when a Michelin inspector is gonna come in." There was one day when we were there, and some of the cooks were like, "Hey, we have, like, a super VIP coming in tonight, just letting you know." So we all me and the 2 other externs were, like, kinda primed for it, but that VIP ended up being the USA or the American president of Michelin Guide, and that was a spooky service because the GM, like, pulled us aside and was like, "Don't look at chef, don't talk to chef. If chef takes something from you, let him do it. Like, just do your job and do it perfectly, but also stay out of the way today and don't fucking say anything." So, that was kind of the vibe that night, which was super intimidating. But at that point, I kind of was at it was later in the externship, so I already felt super comfortable, and I was like, "Okay, like, I already have everything dialed." It was just more of, like that was, like, a scary one, like, you're plating things and you know it's going to someone who could make or break the restaurant. So that was a super scary one. But to get back to your question, um, my stage was it was it was awesome because it was my first time seeing these things up close and seeing, like, a tasting menu and how it operated and getting to work with some really cool ingredients. The first task they gave me was to sweep in front of the restaurant, and I always remember that because it's, like, something you wouldn't think about being important, but in the fall in Brooklyn, there's a bunch of dead leaves everywhere, so we kept in front of our restaurant very neat. Um, so it literally starts even before you walk in the door. That always stuck with me, even though it's just sweeping outside. It's that was the first thing I did, and then everybody was super nice, and that goes for the rest of my externship there. Everybody there was incredibly nice and generous with their knowledge. I think most I don't wanna speak for other restaurants because I know there are certain people who gatekeep and, like, try to they don't wanna like, "What's the point in teaching you? You're just starting out, like, it doesn't matter." But all the chefs that I have met, at Aska, and then a lot of the instructors at school, and just most of the chefs I've been lucky enough to meet have been extremely gracious with their knowledge, and if you reach out and ask a question, they will tell you. So, that helped me get over being intimidated at first. That first day, I definitely did some cool stuff. I cleaned lichen, um, which was I remember Chef Chris Cote, who was the CDC at the time, was like, "This will take you 3 hours if you let it." And I was like, "Oh, 3 hours? This isn't gonna take me 3 hours." It literally took me almost 3 hours to clean this lichen. Like, it took me a solid 2.5 hours. That was a rough task because you had to pick out, like, dead spiders and pine needles, and lichen is like a moss that sits on the forest floor, so there's just everything in there, and it's like a web of biomatter, so you're just, like, picking through it with tweezers and soaking it and then picking through it again and then soaking it again, and it takes forever, and it's all for 1 dish, so that was, like it's just ridiculous. Um, but yeah, and then my first day I had a weird stage because they were doing a wedding there while regular service was happening on my stage, but so prep was cool, I got to do a bunch of different things, had family meal, and then the service was weird because the wedding was happening while service was happening, and on a stage, you're not really allowed to, like, touch food during service for the most part. So you're kinda just standing in the corner and trying to not be in the way. Their kitchen is super small also, it's in the dining room, so it's a very small kitchen. I'm 6'1", so I was trying to make myself scarce, but it's hard. Um, but yeah, that was really cool, and then Chef Chris was like I was, like, always asking if I can do anything, saying, "What's next?" Instead of "Am I done yet?" or "Can I go home?" Say "What's next?" all the time. That's also a very good piece of advice for anyone just starting out. Um, because eventually you'll say "What's next?" and they'll say "Go home." But until then, you just keep doing things. And I think that was why they offered it to me. And I think every single weekend for that semester, they had 2 or 3 externs or 2 or 3 people coming to stage to see if they'll do their externship. And then Chris offered it to me, and I was like, "Yes," because I went into it knowing it was unpaid, but this was, like, my dream restaurant, so I was like, "If they offer it to me, I'm taking it." Like, I'm just gonna take it, and I'm gonna do it. So, yeah, that was my stage, and he offered it to me, and it was only I mean, probably 50 or 70 people staged over that semester, and then it was just me, this dude, Michael, super cool, and then C, someone else I worked with there. We were the 3 externs, and yeah, that was the beginning of it. That was the stage was a lot less stressful than the actual externship.
Yeah, I can imagine how competitive it is just to even work in one of these restaurants. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, like that's something that I definitely would have taken the opportunity to do so if I had known exactly what I wanted to do when earlier in my career, or if I knew that I was gonna be doing this earlier in my career. Um, can you tell me one mistake you made that you still remember to this day and like, hey, this will never happen again?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you I have a whole list. Like, I've made so many mistakes, especially there, because I was you know, like kind of like a bowl in a china shop because it was such a nice restaurant and I had never been in the kitchen. So I was really just figuring it out. I barely even knew how to cut an onion. I remember like there was is so many, but standout mistake that I will never forget is um making the commies were in charge of making family meal. So I was tasked with making family meal, and at this point, because we went through waves where like later on we would all the commies would work on one part of family and then we put it together, which was a lot better. But at the beginning, it was one commies doing family meal, and that's what you're doing for the morning on top of your other prep. And that was really rough because you had all your other responsibilities, and then you also had to cook for like 10 to 18 people, depending on the day. So one day, Chef Martin told me to make a Swedish potato salad, which I'd never made potato salad before, let alone a Swedish one. And he gave me like loose instructions. He was like, okay, cook the potatoes, and then you're going to take the hake trim because we had hake on the menu, and you're going to sous vide it, and you're going to take some mussels that are frozen that we're not using, and you're going to add those. You're going to add a bunch of dill and just make it taste good. It's like, okay. And the crucial mistake there, which I will never make this mistake again, was I boiled the water and then I added the potatoes like you would for pasta. Um, Easy mistake to make, especially when you're starting out and I was also doing 3 other prep projects. So, and I was rushing. So I was like, oh, this will just cook them quicker. So that caused the potatoes to overcook, obviously. And we were sous videing the fish at such a low temperature that by the time I took the potatoes out, they were overcooked. The fish, I was panicking, so it kind of sat and it got room temperature. So the end result was basically a um, cold to room temperature sort of mashed potato with fish in it and way too much dill. And it was fucking disgusting. And like nobody ate anything until family meal. Family meal was always everybody's first meal of the day there. Some people would eat like breakfast, but most people, family meal was the first meal of the day. And it was borderline inedible. Like some people were like trying to be nice and were like, "Oh, it's not that bad," but like I could tell like on people's faces that it was inedible and it was really bad. Um, and then what I'll never forget really is I went downstairs and Carla was one of the chefs I was working under. She was the chef de partie on the dessert station at the time, and I was like, "Oh, that was pretty bad, huh?" Like trying to get some like I don't know comfort or something from the chef I'm working under, and she just looked at me and she was like, "You need to get your shit together." And that was a turning point because and even Chef Martin at the end when we got our reviews, the first thing he said when we sat down for my final evaluation was he was like, "What happened?" He was like, You're a different person from when you got here." And like that moment was certainly a shaping moment because it feels so bad to fuck up family meal. Like it feels so much worse than fucking anything up during service because everybody's hungry and like you're trying to I don't know, it's just super embarrassing. So yeah, her telling me to get my shit together was very helpful. So shout out Carla.
So sometimes getting scolded is a lot better than being told like that because it hurts more, and
Yeah.
it just makes you feel like, "Ah, man, I really did mess this up pretty hard." And all right, cool. Like, I'll remember next time to boil the potatoes with the water. Like,
Yeah. And of course the next time I made potato salad, because I never make it, was for like this it was for one of my boss's birthdays. And he wanted potato salad and I was like, oh of course, like I have to make potato salad, the dreaded potato salad, which is my nemesis. And then, of course, I undercooked the potatoes because I was, like, scared to overcook them, and I've made every mistake with potato salad possible, and now I can make a very nice potato salad, but it's sometimes, like, you just have to genuinely make every mistake possible before you can actually do something consistently. Like, it's annoying that it is like that, but some things are just like that.
Well, I'm glad you make excellent potato salad now.
Nowadays, yeah. Um, I do wanna share one other mistake I made that was a rough one. Not as bad as that one. That one really, like, scarred me, but we had pine mushrooms. I don't know if you've ever worked with pine mushrooms, but they are from Japan. They are extremely expensive. They are, like, sometimes $600 a pound, $800 a pound, depending on the quality, and I had never used a mandolin before, never, and he handed me a mandolin and was like, "I need you to slice these, like, on the fly." I did not know how to use a mandolin, and I was super scared of it because I had heard of people cutting themselves, and I just, like, wasted a couple pine mushrooms, basically, just totally fucked them up and couldn't make it happen, and then Chef Frederick was like he, like, got frustrated with me, and then he, like, took it from me, and he the mandolin was dull, I'll say that. I just couldn't get it to work, like, they wanted it paper thin, I couldn't get it, but he took his little paring knife and just cut the pine mushrooms so thin by hand, it was insane, and he was like, "Sometimes you have to find another way to do things." And that was a good moment because it's true, like, even if something's not working the way you think, you still have to do it, like, it has to get done right now, so that was another good one.
Yeah, there's definitely a solution to every problem.
Yeah, and
Um,
sometimes it's not the most obvious, but
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, yeah, a dull mandolin sucks because you're just at that point, you're just crushing it, and not
yeah.
keeping the integrity, especially with those mushrooms. They're not yeah, you're right, they're not cheap.
No, they're not cheap, and they're definitely the way they wanted them cut was, like, you'd cut the mushroom in half, and then you'd mandolin it on the flat face that you cut, and you were going for, like, razor thin mushroom shapes because we would, like, drape it over the hake, so it would kind of cover the hakes, and we weren't cooking these mushrooms, so they had to be raw, and
Mhm.
for you to eat them raw, they need to be razor thin, so it's like it was just it's a tough one to it's tough, like, doing that with a dull mandolin is really hard, but, I also just sucked at using it more than likely, that's probably what the real issue was.
So, and Asuka, I guess I wanna call it excellence, but in all reality, they're aiming for perfection every single time. Um, where's the line between healthy discipline and obsession?
Mm, that's a tough one because if you really wanna be, like, good at it, you really have to dedicate yourself to something. That goes for anything, not just cooking. You really have to dedicate yourself to what you're doing. Um, but and discipline is a part of that, but I think you can definitely do too much. I think as long as it's sustainable and you can keep your emotions in check, there's no line because you have to do what you have to do to, like, get that result that you want. But as soon as there's fights in your kitchen or, like, fit people are fighting over ingredients, like, I've heard horror stories about certain restaurants in New York of people literally fist fighting in the walk-in for an ingredient because they wanted to use it. Um, like screaming, super toxic environments. That's all just like emotions bubbling over. Um, but I think if you can stay cool, calm, and collected, there's no like you can be as obsessed as you want.
So, in your kitchen, well, actually in general, do you think a chef is morally responsible for the culture they create in their kitchen?
1,000%. 1,000%.
S
I so I was promoted in October to chef de cuisine, which I've been a sous chef before, but I've never. This is a new role for me, so I'm still learning. But I reached out to my friend David, who is now he was a chef de partie at Aska when I was there, and I worked with him super closely. But now he's the CDC of Aska. And as soon as got promoted, I just texted him and I was like, "Hey, I just got promoted to CDC. Like, any advice you can give me?" And he didn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but what he told me is very important, and it's that you want to make an environment that people want to work in and where people feel happy and safe coming to work. that like, when I asked him for advice on being a CDC and leading, that was what he told me. He didn't say anything about food. Like, it has nothing to do with food. It is just simply about making sure that everybody is happy and, able to do their best work. Because if you create an environment where people are uncomfortable, nobody's gonna do their best work, just genuinely. Like, you can yell and scream all you want, but people work better when they wanna come to work and they wanna do their best and all this stuff. So, that is some advice I think about all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a big thing is the culture and making sure that your team is happy with where they're at. And because I mean, we both know the restaurant industry is a revolving door. When in my last executive chef position, um, when I first started versus the way it ended, it completely different team. Um, so with that being said, we've all had these team members who have heart. They want to learn, they wanna continue to grow, but they're slow. What do you what do you do or what do you tell them in order for them to get better without humiliating them or, giving them any, like, negative if I guess negative, uh, I mean, I wouldn't call it negative feedback, but, in a way where they feel comfortable, like, "Okay, I can do this," you know? Just a pep talk, I guess.
Um, I think that the same way that you're responsible for creating an environment that people wanna work in, you're also like, as a chef, you are responsible for your cooks and their development. So, that is something that for me, kind of that's one of the few things that comes naturally to me is teaching people. It's just, like, ever since I was a kid, I always like, I remember trying to teach my stepmom how to pogo stick when I was, like, 6 years old. Like, it's just I've always been like, "Oh, this is how you do it." Like, I just wanna share information. So, I would say that when you have somebody who's struggling or new or has 0 experience, which happens all the time because we have dishwashers at work even now that are like, you know, they don't know how to make pasta, but now one of my dishwashers, I can depend on him and be like, "Hey, make pappardelle," or, "Hey, make rigatoni, I don't have time today," and he'll be like, "Okay," and he'll just do it. So, you have to give people a chance to fail. Like, you give them responsibility and give them a chance to fail because 90% of the time, they're probably gonna fuck it up. But you give them direction, like, you try to help them, but give them that responsibility. So when they fail, they feel responsible. Like, they're like, "Oh, shit. Like, I messed up the pasta, and, like, now he has to make another batch." Or, um, yeah, you just have to give people the opportunity because if you never let people, like, try new things or do something that's out of their skill set, out of their ability, they're never gonna get better. So, you kind of have to give people that chance, I would say. Um, and also, sometimes people won't I do think it is on the person to ask questions to improve. Like, it's not really like, I can't spend my entire day being like, "Hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. This is how you do this." It's just impossible. There's just too much going on. But when someone does ask a question, I always stop what I'm doing and I'm like, "This is like, I will tell you in full." I'm not and also I try to never gatekeep anything. There's no purpose. Like I said earlier, all the chefs in my career so far have been extremely generous with their knowledge to me, and I will always be grateful for that. So I feel like I it to them, owe it to the chefs of my past to just share. Like, anything I know, and if I don't know, I'll figure it out. Like, if they ask me a question I truly don't know, I will try to sit there and figure it out with them so we can understand why, or if there's a problem and they're, asking, "How do you like, why do you do it like this instead of like this?" I'll tell them, "Oh, well, this is slightly better," and, um, yeah, but I do think that especially when somebody's slower or, struggling, like, you have to I don't know. I feel like I do feel very responsible for that type of thing because when I was in fundamentals at school, at the Culinary Institute of America, they do group leaders in class, so you have, like, a little gold chef hat pin, and you, like you're I don't know. Every if you ask anyone at the CIA, most people will say it's stupid, but it is for me because I was elected group leader in fundamentals. That for me was my first taste of leadership ever, like in my life. So that being said, I was put like my chef. Then once I was group leader and I was doing all these other responsibilities and things, he put me on a station with two of the weaker people in class. Well, the two weakest people in class. Um, and I would get really frustrated because I'd be like, dude, like, come on, like we're working together on something and they'd mess something up and I'd be like, come on, like this is super like you're glazing carrots. This is very simple. Um, but I think he did that on purpose because even though I was new, I was definitely a sponge and I was absorbing things quickly and learning quickly and doing a good job. And I always took that as kind of a lesson of like, you are only as strong as the worst person on your team, and that is true forever in everything. So you really are responsible as a chef to make your people better because you're only as good as they are. Like they're making the food. Like I can't hold their hand through everything. So you have to make your cooks good enough where you can trust them with those responsibilities, and then you know that they're doing a good job.
Yeah, no, definitely passing on the knowledge. You're and you hit it right on the nail. You're only as good as your weakest link. Um, and you're not doing yourself any favors by gatekeeping, at the end of the day. So, you're not doing yourself any favors, you're not doing the restaurant any favors, you're not doing any favors for your guests either. Especially when your team is trying to develop and grow. Um, so aside from that, if you could change one thing overnight about our industry, what would it be?
Probably the substance abuse that is rampant in the industry for sure. Um, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a saint. I definitely drink alcohol and consume marijuana. I will say that, but it stops there. I do not do any other hard substances. Um, I have known, and if anybody listens to my podcast, I know you've probably heard me say this before, but I've known many people who have died from substance abuse, which they do not prepare you for in school. No one tells you that, but that is just a reality of the industry. My friend Carlos, rest in peace. He was big on the cocaine, big big on the cocaine. And it only takes once when you get something that's not coke in there, and then you're done. So yeah, he passed away, and that sucked big time because that was we spent a lot of time to like every day like on the line. Like you're really like you really do get close with people. They become your family. Like you're spending every day with them. I see them more than my family sometimes. Actually, nowadays I see the people at Little Moss way more than my family because I moved out. So I don't see my true family nearly as much as I see my cooks. Um, so yeah, when somebody dies like that, it really sucks. And then yeah, at another job, like we had this woman who started, and I do not know what she was on. She was on something, and it was not good because she was slurring and like she was foaming at the mouth and all these things, and then like she stopped showing up, and like I was frustrated, so I texted her and I was like, "Yo, like you're done." Her name was Tina, rest in peace. But I was like, "Yo, you're done. Like, don't bother coming in anymore. Like, you're just not showing up. Like, I don't know what to do." Other than just let her go. And then we found out a couple weeks later that she died, like literally that day that I texted her, actually. Um, so yeah, super, super depressing and not awesome. So yeah, I guess if I could take like again, stressful job, nothing wrong with having a drink as long as you know your limits, and nothing wrong with smoking a joint or having some edibles is definitely the healthier option. But like if I could take out the hard drug aspects of the industry, I would, because it's just sad when people die. It just blows. There's no upside. It just sucks.
Yeah, and it's a sad reality to our industry, and man, I am sorry that that happened to you.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it definitely was a little bit of a shock because that was my first year out of school, and then the second Carlos was the first year out of school, and then Tina was the second year. So I was like, "What the fuck? Like, am I is someone just gonna die like every year?"
yeah,
Um, but yeah, that shit sucks.
yeah, no, definitely. Um, so I want to get into your to your podcast, which was the main reason why I wanted to bring you on because sorry, I'm getting a bunch of notifications. Um,
I am too for some reason.
so but yeah, your podcast, a lot of valuable insight. And I think that for those who haven't had the chance to check out Owen by the Oven, um, it's such a great podcast. And I think that people should be uh, tuning in into your podcast just because the amount of knowledge, um, the the deep discussions that you guys get into is another great thing. And there's very few podcasts where I feel immersed in the conversation, and your podcast is one of them. Um,
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
yeah, no worries. So why did you start the podcast? What did you need that kitchens weren't giving you?
Well, I'll answer the first one first. So I started the podcast because I graduated from school and then I went to this restaurant called the Black Whale in New Bedford and wasn't super happy there. And then I got promoted to sous chef and I went to sail off and I also wasn't super happy there. But I was kind of just getting experience with high volume kitchens and like getting comfortable with volume. I took a 3-month break after sail off to just kind of like think about what I wanted to do. And I had taken a year off of social media because I felt like I was just scrolling mindlessly, constantly, like it was just consuming my life. So in that break, I went hunting with my dad, which I do every year. Um, and I went to California with my mom, and I hadn't really spent any time in California, so that was cool. But during that 3-month break, I was thinking of like I knew I was going to get a job again because I needed to make money. Obviously, got to pay the bills. But at the time, I was thinking of maybe doing a food truck or a food stand, or I had this entrepreneurial mindset because my dad was very entrepreneurial. He started many businesses when I was a kid, and he would do knife sharpening, knife making. He had Whole of Outdoors, which is just like he would make knives and do outdoorsy stuff, make canoes, kayaks, paddles, all by hand. He had IF Connect, which was a data company because he ended up going into data and like a more corporate sector. But I always growing up, I would see him doing all these businesses, and that just felt very natural. Like I was like, "Mm, owning your own business is something I want to do." So in 2022, when I was still at the Black Whale, I by the way, anybody starting a business, this is not the order you do it in. So I got my LLC, and that I got it because I wanted to start doing like cooking classes and like finding some other way to make money other than just work. Because I also want to be wealthy. So I was like, okay, I want to have independent income. I want to be independently wealthy. That is like the goal. Um, but I also want to keep working in kitchens. So what can I do? And I really planned out the food truck pretty far. I wrote a business plan and everything. Started looking at trailers and all these different things. And I showed my dad the business plan. He was like, "This is terrible. You have to start over." I'd never written a business plan before, so that's how it goes. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't want to stand in a truck. I'm tall. Like I don't want to stand in a truck and be hunched over all day. So I thought about the logistics of like if I let's say everything goes right and I do have a food truck, what is my day to day going to look like? I wasn't super stoked about being in a food truck. So then I kinda had this void of like, "Well, what am I gonna do? Like, there has to be something else. Like, I'm gonna get a job, but there has to be something else." And for a long time, I was thinking about doing a long form cooking thing, originally thinking of just, like, having a guest and cooking with them, which I still may do at some point, um, with the Owen by the Oven podcast, but, um, it kind of became like, what can I do now that I can also do while I work? And I love Anthony Bourdain. I grew up watching him on No Reservations. Um, one of my favorite people, rest in peace. And I started thinking of like, well, what is my ideal lifestyle? Like if I could click a button and have my ideal lifestyle, what would it be? And it really was kind of like what he was doing. Like I want to travel the world and meet people and eat food because I like eating more than I like cooking. And just like learn about people. And I listened to a lot of podcasts and slowly I just was like, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm working towards. Like the goal is the reason it's Owen by the Oven is because the goal ultimately is to go to other people across the world and sit next to their oven and talk to them. That is the concept. And a lot of them, the early episodes are in my house because that's just an oven that I can record next to. But the episode with Lisa and Shannon, which I think is episode 9 and 10, we filmed at Little Moss where I work. So we filmed it by that oven. So that was like a trial of seeing what it would be like to record in the kitchen. And there's some challenges because the vents come on and the ice cream machine makes noises. Like it's tough from an audio standpoint. Um, but yeah, the next one that's coming out, episode 17, is with this dude Craig Bowerson. Super cool guy. But he was really the first person that I did one with that was like the concept of Owen by the Oven. It was because we were that when I was taking that break, when you were hunting, we stayed at the Birches in Maine, which is just like a camping resort. It's just like log cabins, really. It's not resort is the wrong word. It's log cabins, and they have a kitchen. They have like a bar and a dining room, which is pretty cool. So you can go get dinner. Which most hunting camps, if anybody hunts, there's no kitchens usually. So this, I guess, it is sort of a resort. But we were there. This is before I started the podcast, and I was like, I wonder what it's like to be a chef up here because we're way up in northern Maine. So like there's just not a lot going on. There's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of stores. So I was just like, what does it take to run a restaurant up here? And then when I went a year later, when we went hunting again, I just called the Birches and was like, hey, I'm going to be staying there next week. I have a podcast. Can I talk to your chef? Like that is what this will become. And we did, and we sat next to the we sat in the log cabin where we were staying, and we sat next to a wood fire oven that was in our log cabin, and we talked. And he was really the first one where it was like, I did not know this dude at all. Like I knew nothing about him. We had only messaged a little bit beforehand, and basically just went in blind. And it was really good. Like it was a very good conversation. I'm putting it out this week. I'm very excited. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the long ass answer of why I started it is really, I just want to meet people and find a way to not only become independently wealthy, like make money off of it eventually. That's not really why I'm doing it, but I just want to make enough off of it to fund my own travel where I can travel and meet other chefs and record podcasts. That's really like the goal, while working as well, because this is something I can do while working, which is really the big one, because you can't really start a food truck while you're working full time as a chef. There's just not enough time in the day. But yeah, so that's why I started it. Sorry, my answer was so long. I actually forgot what the second part of that question was.
No, you're fine. Um, so during your journey of doing all of that, right? Um, what was it that you were searching for in terms of while you're interviewing the your guest? Now, don't get me wrong, like when I interview my guest, whether it's a 3 Michelin starred chef or someone who works in the front of house, I ask questions that I would like to know about, you know? Hence, we talked about your 2 Michelin star experience and then your stage. But those are questions that I do wanna know about, as well as I'm sure people that are, curious about what it's like to stage or what it's like to have an externship. So, what did you need in terms of, like, what were you looking for, eh, question-wise and stuff like that when you're interviewing these chefs?
That's a good question because it's changing, like, that the answer to that question, if you asked me at the first one, would change to now, because after doing the one with Craig, that one, I wrote questions that I wanted to ask, but I didn't know him at all, and actually going in not knowing them as opposed to somebody who I know very well, I thought would be a disadvantage, but that was the biggest advantage because that is when the conversation becomes authentic, because there is something to that, because the ones where I go question for question, like the David Tennis podcast I did, I was very nervous to interview him because he's, like, kind of famous in a way, and, like, that one, I can tell watching it back that I'm going question for question, and he'd give me an answer, and I could have continued the conversation, but I kinda would just go into the next question because I was, like, just nervous. But I think going forward, what I'm going to continue to do and what I do now is I will always brainstorm on what I wanna know. Like, I'll write, insert chef's name here, and then I will write a brainstorm of just everything I wanna talk about, even if it's just one word, um, like French cooking or, this or that, depending whatever it is. I will do a hard brainstorm and then write some questions, but what I've noticed is when I do that, if I just talk to them, these questions come up naturally anyway. So nowadays, I'm leaning more towards fully conversational podcasts, and I'm going to do less preparation because I think it actually makes it better. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I would say that I prepare. But if it's someone like David Tanis, like, I did have things I wanted to get out, like get out of him. Like, I wanted to ask him about writing a cookbook and what that's like and the process and everything because he's written a bunch of cookbooks. I wanted to ask him about his time at Chez Panisse. So, like, those are questions I will write in the brainstorm, but and then I'll have that there with me as a reference, but like, I will glance at it and be like, "Oh, I guess I'll ask that." But I find often things come up naturally, like, 50% of the questions I will have to search through and then ask, but the other 50%, it's like, I'll just ask it anyway because the conversation will go towards, like, cooking in California, and then it'll be like, "Oh, how was your time at Chez Panisse?" Like, these things just come up naturally, um and yeah, it is easier when you don't know the person though, because it really is like I'm hearing these things for the first time, and the audience is hearing it with me for the first time instead of me doing like a deep dive on somebody, like super super deep dive, which is valuable, and I do still do that. But sometimes when it's someone like David Tanis, I could do a deep dive. You know what I mean? Because he's famous and he's done interviews, he's done videos, he's done talks at the CIA. He's done this and that, and I was able to, like, read his books and, like, learn a lot about him through things that have been done before. But when it's someone like Craig Bowerson, the one that's about to come out, what research can I do? Like, there is no research. He is a chef that is working at the Birches, and, like, there's no prior research I can do, and I do actually think that that's good.
So, um, you're interviewing the chef, right? Chef, Bowers, right?
Yeah,
And,
Chef Bowerson.
Bowerson, sorry. Um, but you don't really know anything about him. Do you think, uh do you think a chef like him should build a platform, or do you think it'll dilute the craft or your podcast in general?
I believe, having only started this a year ago, that it is valuable to like build a social media presence and everything and to do that aspect of it because it can be lucrative in the long term. But it really just depends on like what they want to do. Like if you not even talking about Craig Bowerson because I like he's but just for anybody, like you can just it's pretty easy to make videos and it's easy to like study content and just do that. Like I do think that anybody can do it and it's like why not do it? I think you should do it if you have an interest and you want to, if you have a genuine goal in mind, but sometimes like I have some friends who are like they're better cooks than me, but they don't have any social media presence and that's okay. Like if they are more focused on just doing their chef career, that's fine. But I do something to answer your question, because I'm rambling. I think it's easier to start like let's say you want to open a restaurant. I feel like most people who are chefs or cooks, that is their goal to open a bakery or whatever. Like at some point they want to open their own place. That is most people's thing. Not everybody. Some people want to just work forever for other people, and that is completely okay. You can have a very full career working for other people. But for anybody who wants to work for themselves, don't you think it's easier to get investors to open a restaurant when you already have a following and you already have a platform than if you don't? And that's something I thought about a little bit because if you have, let's say you have a million followers, right? It's a lot. You can post something and thousands of people will see it right away. So that is incredible marketing and it's independent. You don't have to pay anybody for that marketing. So I think for any chef or any cook out there that wants to do something like that in the future, you should just start making content because the only thing that's going to happen is it's like you will get more eyes on you and that's from a marketing standpoint. Again, I went to business school for a little bit before I went to culinary school. That's just free marketing. So I don't know. I think it's good for people to build their own platforms and everything. Um, if that's what you're asking.
So we can get into the investor aspect of things because that's like a whole podcast on its all on its own, you know? Um, and I recently just got my business degree. So I think I'm qualified to speak on that. Um, but man, so you're right. I mean, I think for me personally, maybe it's just because I'm here in California. Everything's super expensive.
Mhm.
Um, so and don't get me wrong, like I would love to have an investor so I can open up my own restaurant. I'm a private chef. I run my own business independently. And 100% of the funding is coming from me. Um, so at the end of the day, it is hard to to do the sales and then um the social media aspect and just even like trying to find an investor who is willing to open a restaurant here in California where again things are super expensive. uh Orange County, San Diego County, LA, all super expensive. But those are all the congested areas where, people are going to flock to when it comes down to, restaurants and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to talk to you about that, some other time. Um, but during your, I guess during your interviews with these other chefs that you're having, what's one of the hardest truths that you've learned from interviewing these chefs? What what idea was it that I guess made you change a perspective on exactly on your philosophy on cooking?
Hmm. mean, probably talking with David Tanis and really getting to just, like, sit down and talk with him because the reason that podcast even happened is because Lisa, my chef, the chef owner of Little Moss, we do, like, cookbook dinners sometimes, and she's a huge fan of David Tanis. I genuinely did not know who David Tanis was. He's like a celebrity, but a secret celebrity. Like, he's very low key, and he doesn't really, like, do a lot of media, and all the media he has done is from, like, a decade ago. Um, so getting to just like, after this 3-day cookbook dinner we did, he was gracious enough. I asked him and was just like, "This is an opportunity, so I'm gonna take it." I was like, "Do you wanna do my podcast? I'm just starting it, but I think you'd be a good guest." Getting to just sit down with him, who and he's like a seasoned chef. He was, co-head chefing at Chez Panisse for, like, 25 years or 30 years or something. um, and just get to pick his brain and realize, like, I mean, his whole thing is like simplicity. That is what he preaches, and I do think about that a lot. That did change my perspective because it is really easy to overwork something, especially nowadays for me. Like, I'm in this chef de cuisine position. I'm trying to, like, we do tasting menus sometimes, and it is really easy to try to be creative for the sake of being creative, and I'm guilty of that. I know many people who are guilty of that, who want to just do something really cool and flashy, or use some really cool technique, or something that they saw in Granda, or something that they, um, saw on Instagram, or like these cool techniques. And I think a lot of the time, when you do something like that, you're kind of taking away from an ingredient. Like, obviously, every technique has its place, and it can be really good and cool. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. Like, an example is on the last tasting menu we did, my friend Fook, who I work with, we went to school together, and we actually work together currently, which is great. He's awesome. I love Fook. But we did a potato leek soup, like a vichyssoise type of situation with caviar for this tasting menu, and we did it in the ISI. So it was kind of like a foam, not a foam, but like a whipped soup. Really, we pumped air into it with an ISI. So it was really fluffy. We called it like a fluffed potato leek soup. That's cool because it's like a new modern technique on take on a classic, which I think can be a good thing. And that's an example of like using a technique to kind of, but the important thing there is that it's still potato leek soup, which is like that is a classic dish. You don't need to like reinvent the wheel. Like, the classics are a classic for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I think it's just easy to overwork things sometimes. Sometimes it's better to just keep things simple. And so yeah, that was my biggest perspective change, was talking to David, because I definitely would try to overwork things. And now when I'm being more creative more often, it is sometimes just an exercise in not overcomplicating things, and just having good quality ingredients and letting them speak for themselves, because that is always the answer.
Yeah, I think one of my, very first tasting menus, my mentor was telling me how, um, I went over the top too, and it eventually masked the protein because we were a steakhouse too, right? So it eventually masked the protein, and at that point, he was like, "Hey, like, you gotta remove ingredients until that one ingredient that you remove ruins the dish," you know?
Mhm.
Um, so from that point on, you're like you said, simplicity is probably the best way to go, and at the end of the day, it really does have to taste good,
Yeah,
as
flavor over form.
right. So,
And
um
I do have a good example of exactly what you're talking about. Not even food related, but drink related. We have this bartender at work named Tori, and she makes cocktails sometimes. And I remember she started bringing them to me to taste them, and I would give her super honest feedback, often probably a little too blunt. But a piece of advice I told her, which I heard from Elon Musk on a podcast, and he was talking about using this at a very high level in like, coding and robotics. But you can apply it to anything. And it's whenever you're creating something, your most powerful tool is to subtract. And that is the most underutilized tool. Because when you have a bunch of components on a dish, it can get a little crazy. And like you said, like mask the protein. If you're a steakhouse, like look at Peter Luger. Like that's one of the most famous steakhouses in New York. It's been around forever. And it's literally just steak and butter on a fucking sizzle platter. Like you really can overcomplicate things. And when things, even if all the flavors are there, sometimes something has to go. Like you have to just be like, what do I need to take out here to make this good? And subtracting can be like the biggest help.
Yeah, plus it'll help with the plate cost.
Yeah, that too.
Um, what's the hardest part about being consistent as a chef and a creator?
That's a good question because that is a daily struggle. I always see these videos of people being like, "Oh, you need to post 3 times a day."
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't. It's so much, and I don't like, I am a chef first and a social media person second, so I really try just to post 1 thing a day. That is how I try to stay consistent because I can wrap my head around that. I try to post as many stories as I can because that helps you build a relationship with your, like, core audience, but so, like, stories, I just spam because it's easy, but posting something I'm big on low effort content. I know that sounds like I'm lazy, but sometimes genuinely the lowest effort content does the best. You just have to I don't know if you saw the whisk video that I posted the other day. That was very low effort content. Because if you think about what that post actually is, it's me whisking in a bowl, which I was already doing. I was making an olive oil cake for work. So I was already doing that. I just had to set up a tripod and record like a not even a 10-second clip of me whisking all these different ways. And then I just put the whisk in my mouth and was like, that's the hook. Because hooks are important when you're making content, obviously. But that is an example to me of low effort content, and that video did super good. Like I think it got like 7 million views or something, which is very very good for me. Um, or even like a smaller example is just like I have a video of like a pan on the French top, and I put water in it, and was like, if your pan doesn't look like this, I don't want the steak that comes out of it. Like it really that I was working pasta service and I just took a video of my pan that was too hot. Like that is an example of low effort content, and I think that that is a great way to grow. I've probably gotten more followers from my low effort content, short little reels than my podcast clips. Because the podcast is what I'm trying to grow, but that short form content, that is a means to an end. Like that is how you get people to follow you, and like truly, like that has been the biggest way that I've grown. And for me to stay consistent, it just needs to be easy. I can't make a full cooking video every day because I've made a few cooking videos, like really in-depth cooking videos, and they're not even posted because genuinely it took me all day to film them and it's going to take me another whole day to edit them. And I just can't do it. Um, so yeah, I'm not saying don't put effort into your content. I think the more you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. And people that do make really high quality food videos definitely get a more consistent, better result, and they grow super fast. But for me, somebody who is working like 60 hours a week, I don't have time to take a whole day to film. I just simply don't.
Yeah, I say this all the time. Content creation is a second job.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a lot. I sent out a message to one of my friends on Instagram, and I was telling him like, "Man, I admire your work." And he just does cooking videos. He does Mexican food and South American cuisine too. And I was just telling him, "Dude, like, I love your content. Hopefully, I'll eventually find the time to do something like that, like what you're doing, because that's what I specialize in, is in Mexican steakhouse cuisine." So when it comes down to that aspect of things, eh, I also wanna, uh, advertise my work doing that. But like you mentioned, it's meticulous editing, it takes all day, and the shot list, the script writing, making sure that you have all of your ingredients. Because if you forget something, you gotta drive all the way to the store and pick up whatever you gotta pick up, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's the stupidest thing like, cilantro or, something small like that. Um, so I wanna know if you could say one thing to the cook who feels invisible right now, what would you tell them?
Um, well, first I would tell them that they're not invisible and that, like, everybody is just at wherever they're at in their journey, and that's okay. Like, I know, like, I'm approaching 10,000 followers on Instagram, which is crazy to me. I really only started, like, a year ago, so it's like, you can, like, just believe in yourself and, like, you can genuinely just like, you can do whatever you put your mind to. I know that's cheesy as fuck, and everybody says that, but it really is. Like, if you just have a little bit. I'm not the most disciplined person in the world, I will say that. But so if I can do it, like, if I can start being consistent and growing something, and if you feel similar, like, I mean, me and you have, like, kind of a similar podcast type of thing. You were actually one of the first people I saw when I was looking at if there was food podcasts. Like, I saw you, I saw the Go To Food Pod, all of these people, and there's many more, those are just the first ones I think of. Um, all of these people started at some point with just an idea, and you just have to, like, execute your idea. So if you feel invisible and, like, you have no chance of doing something like this, believe me, you totally can. And even if you don't wanna do something like this, like a podcast or content creation, just do your best at work, and whatever your goals are, like, just work towards them because you have time. Like, if you have time as long as you keep being diligent, like, you can and align yourself with what future you want. That's kinda what I was talking about earlier where it's like, what is my dream life? Like, traveling and talking to chefs and eating food, that is my dream life. I am working towards that. That is like, at face value, this is a podcast, but that is the goal I'm working towards. So pick your dream life and just work towards it. Like, you can make it happen.
So, what's next for Owen by the Oven podcast?
Right now, what's next is the Craig Bowerson episode is coming out. That's episode 17. So I'm super excited about that because I really enjoyed that episode and we talk about some cool stuff. Um, but I mean, I'm going to just keep cooking because that's what I do. And I'm going to just keep interviewing people until I can't do it anymore. I'm probably just going to do this forever. Like, I'm 25 now. It's when I started. So probably just do this until I'm senile and just see how far I can go.
So I have some lightning round questions for you. Uh, Try to give me your best one word answer, okay?
I'll try. I know I've been rambling this whole time, so I'll try.
No, no, no. No, it's just the lightning round. Yeah. Um, One ingredient you'll defend forever.
One ingredient I'll defend forever. Hold on, I'm thinking. Onions.
Okay. A smell that instantly takes you back in time.
Not to say onions twice in a row, but the smell of, like, garlic and onions sweating in butter is like that is the best smell.
The best cheap food that still is your go-to.
McDonald's. Dude, I will eat a Big Mac any day.
One kitchen habit that you're still trying to break to this day.
Going on my phone.
Oh,
It's really hard when on those days we were talking about earlier where it's slow, it's really hard not to just go on your phone.
yeah. Yeah. Your go-to staff meal.
Curry. Thai curry.
Okay. And a belief about cooking you used to have that you now know or that you now think is wrong.
That chefs have recipes, like, and they gatekeep them. I used to think that chefs had, like, a book of secret magic recipes that was everything, and they would protect them, and that's what made them great chefs, but that is not true. What makes them a great chef is sharing that knowledge.
Awesome. So I've been asking this question to my previous guest. Um, if there were 3 chefs or people in the hospitality industry that you would like to see on my podcast, who would they be?
Marco Pierre White,
Yeah.
Rene Redzepi. Hold on. I'm gonna look up their names so I don't say it wrong. But this is a more not like super duper famous one. Forget their names. I've only learned about them recently. Chef Josh and Maggie from the restaurant Claudine, which is in Providence. It's a new restaurant, and they worked at Per Se. They met at Per Se, and it's a husband and wife chef. And I went and ate there once. It was exceptional. They're kind of a new restaurant called Claudine, and that would be a really cool one.
Awesome. Well, chef, I'm trying to get Rene Redzepi into my podcast. I know he's in LA right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, he followed me on Instagram the other day, which actually was like the most fucking insane thing that's ever happened to me. And it doesn't, even saying it now, it doesn't feel real. But yeah, man, he's a real person. Don't be intimidated. Just ask.
man, that's awesome. Um, all right, cool. Well, chef, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to sit with me, to speak with me about your career as well as your podcast. Where can we find you?
You can find me Owen by the Oven on everything. Podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox. If you have it, I know nobody does. That's like nobody uses Castbox, but if you do have it, I'm on there. OwenByTheOven.com. That's where I'm at. And if I'm ever in Orange County, California, we should get together and you can do my podcast.
I definitely would love to be on it. Awesome. Thank you, chef.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.